everyone, and welcome to episode 27 of the Luna's Galaxy podcast. My name is Emmy, but you can also call me Luna, and I'll be the host of this show. Luna's Galaxy podcast goes live on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and other podcast services on Tuesday every 2 weeks. For this episode, we have 4 segments: gaming news, what I've been playing, questions, and video games for girls. These girl gamers, girly games. We're going to be talking all about that. But before we get started, if you would like to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, I would very, very much appreciate it. Also, I've decided to launch my very own Patreon account. So if you are interested in supporting myself and my content financially, you can follow the link in the description to become a Patreon member. There are 3 different tiers available, ranging from $3 to $12 Canadian, which I think the highest tier is roughly $10 in the US, so different currencies, but depending on what tier you contribute to, you can gain early access to the Luna's Galaxy podcast and any upcoming YouTube videos, exclusive Patreon content, including random Emmy posts, and my weekly gaming journal, podcast outlines and video scripts, and a special thank you message from me at the beginning of the podcast and at the end of any YouTube videos. Speaking of which, thank you to my first Patreon subscribers at the Galaxy tier, Tolizu and Stevie. I really appreciate your support and hope that everyone who decides to support my Patreon enjoys the extra content. Also, if you can't support me financially, that is 100% okay too. If you want to support me in other ways, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, leave a review, share my content, etc., etc. It means a lot to me, regardless of if you support me, how you choose to support me, whatever. I'm incredibly grateful just to have you listening to me and enjoying my content. So thank you so much, regardless. But anyway, let's get into the gaming news. So first up, we are going to be having a Disney and Marvel game showcase. This got announced 2 weeks ago now. It was a while ago. This was announced a while ago. And this is the Disney and Marvel game showcase, which is going to be September 9th at D23. And I am, of course, hoping for some Kingdom Hearts news. In the past, Kingdom Hearts has pretty much always been at D23. I don't know if it has been since the release of Kingdom Hearts 3, but leading up to it, I remember we got a new trailer there. That was where they revealed that Big Hero 6 was going to be in Kingdom Hearts 3, so I definitely think we're going to see something Kingdom Hearts. I don't think it's going to be Kingdom Hearts 4, but I think we could see some news about Kingdom Hearts Missing Link, which is supposed to be coming out in beta this year, I believe, so I would be surprised if we didn't hear something soon, so that's where I'm placing my bet. As for literally everything else in the showcase, I'm not sure. But I hope there's some cool Disney announcements. I'm not a Marvel type of person, but I like Disney games. So that'll be interesting. I'm interested to see just how this will be structured, how it'll be, because obviously we've done a lot of game showcases. We've got Nintendo Direct, PlayStation Showcase. There's so many things. But I'm curious to see what it'll be like coming from such a big company like Disney, I guess, that hasn't really, this is the first time they're doing a Disney and Marvel game showcase. This is the first time it feels like they're really dipping their toes into what gamers want to see, these types of showcases. So I am curious how it'll go down, if it'll be a shit show or if it'll be really good. I mean, I'm leaning more towards really good because it's Disney and Marvel. There should be some big showings, I would assume, some bigger games. But it's more so the pacing and just the presentation of it all that I'm more curious to see. But that'll be interesting. Maybe I'll stream it, maybe I won't. It kind of depends. When is September 9th? I don't know. It's 5 p.m. So maybe we'll see. I'll get back to you guys on that. But anyway, in other news, Zero Time Dilemma has been delisted from the PlayStation Network. This happened, I want to say, the day after the last podcast came out, so almost 2 weeks ago now. And I found this out because Iron Aggro posted something in the Discord about, Zero Time Dilemma has been delisted, and I was like, what? And I checked on the PlayStation app, and I was like, yeah, you can't buy it anymore. And so I actually did some digging around, and I believe the PS Vita version of Zero Time Dilemma and the 3DS version of Zero Time Dilemma got delisted about a year ago, I want to say. But more recently, the PS4 version of Zero Time Dilemma got delisted, so it's just not on PSN at all anymore. And so that was weird. And so what most people are speculating and are assuming to be true is, so basically something very similar happened with the Danganronpa games, I want to say 1 or 2 years ago, where they all got delisted and then they all got republished. So if you don't know, the Zero Escape games were originally published in the West by Axis Games, and now Spike Chunsoft has been doing more of their own publishing. So, a few years ago they were doing publishing through Axis. Danganronpa was published by NIS America, so different publishers, but now they're doing their own publishing. So what people are assuming is that similar to what happened with Danganronpa, those publishing rights, licensing, whatever, has expired from, Axis or NIS America in the case of Danganronpa. And so it's just taking some time for them to be relisted as Spike Chunsoft. So that's pretty much what's going on, at least that's what we're assuming. So Zero Time Dilemma is no longer on PlayStation Network, but I think it's going to be up pretty soon. And I think it's going to be back up pretty soon, because about a week later, so yesterday, as the time of I'm recording, Zero Time Dilemma has been announced to be releasing on Xbox on August 30th. So it got delisted from PlayStation 2 weeks ago, and then, yesterday they announced, well, they didn't really announce, it was just like an Xbox blog post. The Xbox blog post had Zero Time Dilemma on there, releasing August 30th, which is actually the date the podcast comes out. So if you're listening on the day this comes out, if you have an Xbox, go play Zero Time Dilemma. Were the Nonary games on Game Pass? I want to say that they are. I want to say that the Nonary games also came to Game Pass. I know Danganronpa did. I think the Nonary games did as well. We don't know if Zero Time Dilemma is going to come to Game Pass, but I'm maybe. Yeah, because when the Nonary games originally came out on Xbox, it was originally announced to be on Game Pass, not just Xbox. Anyway, so maybe that'll happen. I don't know, but at least for now, it seems to just be, on there, not Game Pass. But we shall see. And what I'm assuming is that August 30th, when Zero Time Dilemma comes out on Xbox, we'll also see it be relisted in PlayStation Network. That's my guess. If not, then I'm going to be kind of sketched out, but I'm assuming at least, that week within that similar time frame, that's going to be back on PSN. So we'll see. And I'm also fingers crossed that, now that the Nonary games and Zero Time Dilemma, the Axis Games licensing has kind of expired or whatever, I'm fingers crossed that this means that those games can now come to Switch. Because, once again, that's basically what happened with Danganronpa. Once that licensing ran out, Spike Chunsoft was like, let's put this collection on the Switch. So, every Nintendo Direct from here on out, I'm going to be insufferable because I'm going to be wanting Zero Escape on Switch. Even more so because now I feel like it's actually within my grasp. I feel like it might actually happen. So, really, really hoping that this means in the future we'll get Zero Escape on Switch. Because who would have thought it'd come to Xbox first, right? But anyway, very exciting. And some more very exciting news for me anyway, is that Bratz Flaunt Your Fashion has been announced to be releasing in the fall of this year. So how this went down was the Bratz TikTok account posted this little video, this little TikTok of this, a controller, and people were talking about, the nails, because the girl holding the controller had, these really, nice nails, they were done. And, a lot of the comments were like, oh my god, the Bratz games are coming back, but then you'd see a few that are like, guys, it's, probably just for the nails, they're probably doing, a nail line or something. And so, I got my hopes up, and then I was like, okay, let's calm down my expectations. Because what are the odds that in the year 2022, we're gonna get a new Bratz game? What the fuck? That would be insane, right? But then the next day, this trailer came out, and it looks great. It's gonna be a day one buy for me. Which is wild to think about, because y'all know me. I don't buy games day one unless it's something I really fucking want. But I really fucking want this, and I'm probably gonna stream it. It's gonna be so much fun. I don't think it's gonna be fully priced either, so that definitely helps. And they're doing physical versions of it too, which also kind of surprised me. I don't know how easy that's going to be to get, because I think I'll probably have to go right through the publisher. I doubt it's gonna be on Amazon or Walmart or anything, which is what I usually do. So we'll see, but I'm gonna try and get a physical version of it. And it's releasing for all consoles, which is wild. It's coming out for Xbox, Switch, PS4, PS1, oh my god, not the PS1, PS5. Girl, okay. And Steam. So that's also very exciting, which it kind of made me laugh because I, the Somnium Files Nirvana Initiative, for some reason didn't get a PS5 version. It's just PS4. And so I thought it was funny that Bratz is getting a PS5 version, but, Nirvana Initiative didn't. Anyway, this is very exciting for me. The trailer was just like, it's playing the Bratz theme song. The style of it, I'm not gonna lie, it's not like my favorite. But, like, I'm just happy we're getting this, so, like, I'm not going to complain. I'm very happy. I'm trying to decide what I want to get it on, if it's going to be, like, a Switch, if I'm going to get the PS5 version. It's between those two, because I'm like, maybe I want to play it on the go, but then I'm also like, well, I want to stream it, so then I'd be playing on my PS5 anyway. So, I don't know what I'm going to do there. I'll probably get both or something. I don't know. But I'm very much looking forward to it. And there's some parts in the trailer where it seems to like call back to the older Bratz games. So I streamed Bratz Rock Angels about a few months ago. I don't know, it's been a while. And that was so much fun. And like there's parts in the trailer where you can tell that they definitely took inspiration from those older games. So it looks like they're bringing back, like, they have a roller skating in the old games. It's like, it's kind of weird and jank to control. But, the charm or whatever, and, some of the mini games, etc., etc. Definitely, like, all the fashion customizations of the outfits, the makeup, all that. It just, I'm so excited for it. Like, who would have thought? Like, to me, this was one of those things where it's like, this is, like, never gonna happen. And Bratz has kind of been in a revival era lately with, like, they're releasing, they're re-releasing older dolls and, doing all this stuff, but I don't know. I thought a game was like the least possible thing to happen. I was like, maybe they'd revive the show. They could, I could see them doing a lot of things. I didn't think the game would be one of them. So this is very, very exciting. I'm very excited. Interestingly, the original games were made by THQ. This new game isn't. I can't remember exactly who the developer is, but it's not the same. It's not under the same developer or publisher that those original, older games were, like Rock Angels and Diamonds and all that. But I'm very excited. Can you tell? Anyway, another piece of news. This is related. Uchikoshi has once again teased i3 on Twitter. So he's done this a few times now, just kind of low key. But this one was more high key. So Jackie Lastra is Iris's English voice actor, and I can't remember what the tweet was, but she tweeted something about Somnium Files. I think it might have been like her playthrough of Nirvana Initiative or something. And Uchi replied to it, and he said, "I got a great idea about Iris for the third. Looking forward to hearing it next time." There was more in that tweet, but, just highlighting the important stuff here. Like, Somnium Files 3 hasn't even been announced, talked about, teased, really, by Spike Chunsoft in any, like, professional, public way. But Uchikoshi he's like, we're the third gay. And part of me is, like, scared because I think of Zero Escape, right? Like, if you liked Zero Escape before Zero Time Limit got announced, you know the pain of finishing Virtue's Last Reward and then, reading the VLR interview and, just looking into stuff and hearing Uchikoshi say things like, you'll hear about it in the third game and, like, all this type of stuff. And then as Zero Escape 3 got canceled, but then it got greenlit again after a few years, and then it came out and it was kind of a mess. So I am a bit nervous that Uchi is doing this, because I'm like, what if... Because Spike Chunsoft put out that survey, right? Gauging interest for future projects. And I'm like, well, what if the survey doesn't go well or something? And they're like, actually, let's not do i3. And then meanwhile, Uchikoshi's on Twitter having already said these things. So I'm not sure. I'm hoping that we don't go down that route again. The bad route, the bad ending. But who knows? Who knows? Anyway. The Game Awards for 2022 have been announced. They're going to be on December 8th on a Thursday, as usual. And this year they're introducing a new category for best adaptation, which is interesting. And I started thinking about this, and I'm like, I wonder what the nominations will be like, because we are getting more gaming adaptations over the years. You know, we've had like the Sonic movies that have been good. We just got the Uncharted movie. The Last of Us is going to be having its TV show next year. We've had a lot of Resident Evil stuff of varying quality. But there's been, like, Arcane. There's been a lot of video game adaptations lately. And so, you know, I think interesting, but then I think of the quality of most of the adaptations, and it feels like maybe we're a bit premature to this category. Because, like, if you just think of nominations, you're like, okay, Sonic 2 is going to win this year. Because that's, like, I feel like that's the only video game adaptation this year that came out that hasn't received some sort of, like, the fans don't like this. Like, I enjoyed the Uncharted movie, but I know that's, like, it's, like, pretty mediocre. Like, I enjoyed it, but anyway. So, it's, like, the quality of that category is what makes me, like, because I don't think the nominations are going to be spectacular. Like, there's going to be, like, one winner that, you know, it's probably going to be between the good to great tier, but I don't know. I'm curious to see how this will turn out, because, I mean, yeah, there have been more adaptations over the years, but how good have they been? How worthy of an award have they been? So, that's interesting. But anyway, Gamescom opening night live happened, and I watched some of it. I like, struggled to watch it because we were getting, like, a new Wi-Fi thing installed, and so, like, halfway through, they were doing that, and I lost Wi-Fi, and so I'm, like, trying to watch using my data, and it just didn't really work out. But I watched, like, the first hour of the show. I saw everything that was on Twitter, you know, after that point. And there was just nothing in it for me. It's rare that happens. You know, usually I can pinpoint one thing in a show that really makes me interested. like last year at Gamescom, it was Saints Row, or I think Dokkan was also there that year. And those things both, like, piqued my interest. There's literally nothing this year for me. And from what I've heard from other people, they seem to kind of enjoy it, or at least, you know, put it on the same scale as those other showcases, but there was nothing. There was nothing in there for me, so let's just move on. So PlayStation has increased the price of the PS5 basically everywhere except the United States, and so it went up in Canada, which is where I am. I am Canadian. You probably know this by now. It went up about $20 in Canada, at least, I checked for the one that I have, which is, like, the physical, the one with the disc drive. And I assume it's the same for the digital only. It went up by, like, $20 Canadian, which isn't much. You know, if you're going to buy a PS5, what's another $20? But it is still shitty, like, to say the least. And I don't know. It sucks. I would not have done this if I was PlayStation. I mean, I know I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, and I mean, here's the other thing. The hardcore gamers that are seeing this news on, like, IGN or whatever, like, we're gonna know that the price went up. But I don't think most people that are looking to buy a PS5, you know, for their kid, like the casual gamer, I don't think they're even gonna fucking know that the price went up, or, you know, like, it's not gonna be enough for anyone to budge on, you know, you're gonna spend, like, $500 to $600 on a console. What's another 20, you know? So I don't think it's going to change much, like, from a consumer standpoint, but it's still shitty. And my last bit of news is that the Kingdom Hearts Dark Road finale happened. I watched the Super Spaghetti Bros. I watched their stream of it. Bros of the Ansem Report podcast. Go check them out if you like Kingdom Hearts. Wonderful, wonderful Kingdom Hearts podcast, but you probably already know that. And it was really fun watching them. I had a lot of fun just, you know, vibing in the stream. Jason and Mike were doing really funny voice acting, like, kind of Mickey Mouse voice. It was fun. I liked it. Go check them out. But Dark Road itself was, like, very mid. And I'm not going to, like, get into spoilers here, because, frankly, I didn't see the entirety of it. I watched maybe, like, the last hour and a half of Dark Road-ish. And just from what I watched, I was like, I don't get the hype. I don't understand. To me, it was very mid. I was just like, okay, you know, whatever, moving on. Let's just forget about that. So, I don't know. I'm starting to feel like maybe I'm a fake Kingdom Hearts fan, because I don't get it. Anyway, that's all for news. So let's talk about what I've been playing. So I'm still playing Final Fantasy XIV. I finished Heavensward. the ending was a lot. That was a lot. I also started Stormblood though, and that's more so what I want to talk about. So I'm really enjoying Stormblood so far, and I feel like this might be controversial, but I feel like I'm going to enjoy Stormblood more than Heavensward. And I say it's controversial because I feel like when I see most people ranking like the 14 expansions, it's usually like Shadowbringers, Heavensward, and Stormblood is like near the bottom. I couldn't think of the fucking word. It's usually near the bottom of like that tier when they're like ranking Final Fantasy XIV and the expansions and stuff. But I'm really enjoying Stormblood so far. I really like the environments. So you go to like Alamigo, and there's another area that I can't think of the name right now. But it's like where Doma is. Kugane? I think it's Kugane. So that's where I've been so far. And I really like those environments more than the Heavensward environments, which I think plays a lot into that because so much of Final Fantasy XIV is just the world. And so I think that really helps. I also like sort of the characters and the conflicts that are happening in Stormblood. I just think that they're more interesting than Heavensward. Heavensward was really all about, you know, the dragons and this decade, century old conflict. And I wasn't very invested the same way that I am with Stormblood. I don't know. I think it's just the dragon thing for me. I'm like I don't care that much about that specifically. I find myself a lot more invested in Stormblood so far. And yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. So yeah, that's fun. But I've also been playing Tinkerbell for the DS, the Nintendo DS. And okay, so me playing Tinkerbell for the DS combined with this Bratz game announcement that happened this past week got me really thinking about girl games lately, which is, you know, why I'm doing this for topic of the show. We're talking about girl games because it's been on my mind. And so I played Tinkerbell as a kid, and recently I rebought it because I think I talked about this before on the podcast, but my mom used to buy like these counterfeit DS games off eBay because they were a lot cheaper, right? And so they worked if you had like a DS Lite. They always worked on my DS Lite. But once I got my DSi 3DS, there's like some sort of anti-piracy thing in those systems that you can't play those counterfeit games on them. You need to have the originals or whatever. And so I couldn't play that Tinkerbell game for so long, even though I wanted to. And so I was just browsing eBay one day, and it was like a cartridge-only version of it. And it was for like, I don't know, like $8 or something. So I was like, fuck it. I'm going to play Tinkerbell again because I hadn't played it in so long. And it is so good and fun. Like, that might sound wild, but like I'm having so much fun with it. And so you play as Tinkerbell and you really use the bottom screen. It's all touch controls with the stylus and stuff. And so, you know, you control Tinkerbell, you can like fly, and the flying feels really good. That might be a weird thing to say, but just like the physics of it, the feeling of it, when you're flying as Tinkerbell, it just feels really good. Like, it feels perfect, like how it should feel. I don't know. And so you play as Tinkerbell, and you have to collect different items like flowers, gemstones, threads, dewdrops, etc., and repair items to help change the seasons, because Tinkerbell is Tinker Fairy, so she's good at fixing shit. And so the aesthetic of this game is so cute and cozy. It's like giving cottagecore vibes. And it's so much fun. So I think part of the reason why I really like it is because you talk to like the minister of each season, so like the minister of autumn, the minister of summer, and all that, and they'll give you like a checklist where, you know, you'll have to find different items or repair items. And so there's just something very satisfying about being able to check off the checklist. And you can get the items by just like finding them in Pixie Hollow, or you can do little mini games to get them, or you can do like favors for other fairies. So, you know, a fairy might ask you to like fix an item for them or to bring them an item, and they'll give you something in return. And there's different mini games, and they all use the stylus. It's all touch controls, and it's so fun. And you can also craft new outfits and accessories, which we love in girl games. That's one of my favorite things. And it's all just so cute because it's like it's fairy themed, and so, you know, the dresses are like leaves and flowers, and it's so, I love it so much. Also, the character models are like surprisingly really good. So if you talk to a fairy on like the top screen, there will be like, sprite isn't the right word, but there'll be like a little model for them, and they look very good. Like, they look better than Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days models, like significantly better. And so, like, it's pretty, it's fun, and it's also like kind of addictive. Like, I just really like the gameplay loop, of, you know, checking the checklist, doing some mini games every now and then, doing favors, you know, exploring Pixie Hollow. I'm having a fantastic time, you guys. It might sound silly. I also had Tinkerbell and the Great Fairy Rescue, I think is what that one is called. I also had that on the DS when I was a kid, and I didn't like that one as much. But it is like very similar with like the outfits and the accessories, but anyway, I think there's like more of a story to it, and the gameplay loop isn't as good. But I am thinking about buying Tinkerbell and the Lost Treasure for the DS, because I don't have that one. And I just, these games are really cute. If you're looking for like a girly game to play, and you like Tinkerbell, this is like a 10 out of 10 recommendation. But anyway, speaking about girly games, my question for y'all for this episode was, what's your favorite girly game? And so, obviously, I mean, maybe not obviously, but according to my analytics, most of my listeners are men. So, I wasn't sure how this question was going to go, but y'all had answers. And so, obviously, you know, gender is a social construction, and anyone can play a girly game. What even is a girly game, right? And so, kind of what I told you guys as a baseline, or to give you an idea of what I'm talking about here, is going to be one of two things. So it can be a game like Tinkerbell or Bratz, where it is, you know, made and really targeted only at girls, right? They're made for girls. Targeted that way, marketed that way. Girls are supposed to play this game. Or it could be something like in more recent years, where we think of things like Animal Crossing or The Sims as girly games, not because they're marketed that way, but just because they seem to have a very big female player base. So that was my guideline, but it's okay if you went off a bit. So the first answer comes from Tolly Zoo, and Tolly Zoo says, Metroid. If that doesn't qualify, I like Style Star on 3DS. Also pretty sure that World of Warcraft qualifies as a dress-up / accessorizing game. And yeah, like, I love when games let you dress up. Like, I know there's this meme that, like, the real end game of Final Fantasy XIV is just, you know, doing glamours and all that. So, that is one, I think, what was I gonna say? Oh my god, it's at the tip of my tongue, and I can't think of the word, but it's like a real, I can't think of the word. What's the word? Anyway, it's a real something, of girly games. Why can't I think of the fucking word? It's a real something of girly games to, like, be able to dress up and accessorize and all that stuff. Like I said, that was one thing I really like about my Tinkerbell game, is getting to get different outfits and accessories. It's a lot of fun. But anyway, why can't I think of that word? That's going to irritate me, like, all day now. I'm going to be editing the podcast, and I'm going to know the word I'm thinking of, and I'm going to be like, damn, you suck. Anyway. And Desi Spark says, the only game I might have played in that category might be the Totally Spies game for the Game Boy Advanced. Okay, interesting. I had a Totally Spies game for my DS, and I don't know if it's probably not the same one, but I remember, if I'm remembering correctly, it was like a bit stealthy, and I remember just getting really frustrated at it as a kid, so I didn't play it much, but I do have it, so there's that. And then V really went ham on her answers. So Super Princess Peach, which I gotta say, I love Super Princess Peach. That's another counterfeit game that my mom got me. And that's another one that I've been thinking about rebuying. Tinkerbell and Super Princess Peach were the only ones that I, like, genuinely wanted to rebuy. Because I have, like, a few other ones, and I've either already rebought them, or I don't fucking care about them enough to rebuy them. But, man, Super Princess Peach was a lot of fun. But anyway, Animal Crossing, that one Barbie.com game where you went grocery shopping. I don't remember that one. This Barbie Kelly CD-ROM game my cousin had. I think it was called Kelly's Clubhouse. Also, as a kid, I had a CD-ROM game that was Cinderella Dollhouse. Dollhouse? I feel... Why is that such a weird word to say right now? Anyway, where it's basically Animal Crossing-esque interior design, but much more basic. Also, America's Next Top Model for the Wii. You could fight in that game. I feel like I gotta get in on that. Also, I'm sure I would still eat up any shitty licensed game from my girly magical girl anime. Man, so there's a Shugochara DS game that was only released in Japan, and I have it on my eBay watch list. And I kind of want to get it because, DS games aren't region locked. You can play them whatever. But I'm like, I wouldn't be able to read. But, it just looks so cute. So, that's a struggle. Also, the Hannah Montana Wii game and the Wizards of Waverly Place DS game. I have the Wizards of Waverly Place DS game. I don't remember the name, but I had this DS fashion/sewing game, and I had a mechanic where you had to swat away moths, or else they would make holes in your garments, and you would have to make patches to cover the holes. And then how could I forget about Mary-Kate and Ashley, Sweet 16, License to Drive, also Hello Kitty Roller Rescue. Thank you, V. Thank you for all your answers. And then Iron Aggro says, does Final Fantasy X-2 count? Because if so, then it's that 100%. Played it for the first time earlier this year, and it quickly became my third favorite game in the series. Oh, I love this. Amazing combat system, fantastic, bright environments and people. My favorite Final Fantasy protagonist in Yuna trying to process her grief and live her life after 10. And most importantly, the entire game is shaped around the fact that it's about 3 girls who actually just want to have fun. Yes! And here's another thing where I was kind of talking about earlier, where such a core part, was that the word I was thinking of earlier? Of, girl games is, dressing up and accessorizing and all that. And in 10-2, you have the dress spheres, and that's how you, form your party is, if you want to be a white mage, you gotta have the dress sphere and all these different things, and it's different outfits, but they all have different, actual gameplay relevance. I really like 10-2. I really want to go back to that. I never technically finished it, but man, I want to go back to 10-2. They're just girl bossing, right? And I think I feel like it's one of those games where, back in the day, people viewed it as what the fuck, falling up from 10 and then getting 10-2. It's just, it can feel kind of jarring, and also just, back then people didn't want, I guess, that kind of girl power in their games. Or maybe the campiness of it, I don't know. But it was definitely a different vibe. But I feel like people like 10-2 more now than they did when it first came out, which makes me very happy. Because 10-2 was one of my first Final Fantasy games, actually. I got it at, one of those, not a yard sale, but, a market type thing where, they have the tables and it's, used games, and that's where I got 10-2. And, man, I really like 10-2. I love that it's your third favorite Final Fantasy game. That is, that's fantastic. I really want to go back to it, but anyway. And then Adam says, this one is pretty tough considering my taste, which is understandable. Understandable, Adam. Animal Crossing, I guess, if you consider that to be one. It's chill and a lot of fun. Started with New Leaf, didn't play it as much as I want to, TBH. I feel like I should go back to it soon. New Horizons took over my life for a month, like everyone else, and I really enjoyed it, though it feels a little hollow to me with the villagers constantly saying the same thing. Just started playing the first Animal Crossing for the first time on the Steam Deck. It's very cute. I'm looking forward to the villagers being mean. Other than that, I had a Wizards of Waverly Place game on the DS that was bad, but I enjoyed it a lot. I was 9, I don't know. Yeah, I remember the Wizards of Waverly Place game, and it wasn't good. But I'm glad we shared that experience. But yeah, I definitely think Animal Crossing counts because even though, it wasn't marketed towards girls, and, the player base is, I would say, pretty even when it comes to, boys, girls, not boy, girl, everyone, all the different genders that play Animal Crossing. I feel like it's pretty evenly spread. But when you see people, like a lot of streamers that are really into Animal Crossing, it's usually women. And so, yeah, I feel like that definitely counts. And, you know, kind of like I've been talking about, I think it's one of those games where girl games and games that girls tend to like are ones that have like a lot of customization where it's dressing up, which I've talked about a lot already. Or if, it's like Animal Crossing where like you can decorate your house, or in the case of New Horizons, you can really decorate your island. And so I definitely feel like that counts. And also, yeah, I wish the villagers were mean in New Horizons. I feel like, I don't know, Adam, one of my favorite Animal Crossing games is Wild World. There's like not much to do in it, especially compared to New Leaf and New Horizons. But, I mean, if you're interested, I really like Wild World. I have a lot of nostalgia for it, so that's probably why. That's the DS one. And, yeah, if you're looking for something to try out, I would recommend Wild World, because they're, like, still mean in that. So, it works. And then Mila says, ooh, gender. Definitely visual novels aimed at women. So that primarily includes otome games, which is girl-boy romance, and yuri, girl-girl romance. And haven't tried yaoi yet, guy. To form an opinion, examples of games include the likes of Code Realize, Cupid Parasite, Norn 9, and Highway Blossoms. I'm so glad more of them are getting localized from Asia as well as made by indie devs. Yeah, I definitely want to try more otome games. My only experience is with Mystic Messenger, which was the mobile game, but I kind of want to try more. I don't know if I would enjoy it. It's like one of those weird things. I don't know, but I might try more. But I think that definitely counts. They're very obviously targeted towards women, so hell yeah. And then Cubic says, I had to share the PS1 with my sister as a kid, but the only game she wanted to play was Mary Kate and Ashley Magical Mystery Mall. She eventually stopped playing games altogether, and I 100% it when I got super bored during a summer. God bless. And then Soy Sauce Asian says, Imagine Ice Champions for me. It was bought for my sister, but I was the one who played a crap ton of it. It's shockingly anime as hell. Interesting. There was a lot of those Imagine games for the DS, and I don't think I had like any of them, but now I kind of want to try them. Because y'all know I really like the DS and like that era of games, so we'll see. I might be playing some Imagine Ice Champions. And Trio says, it was definitely tough to think of games that I played that would be considered a girly game, but if I were to choose, I would pick Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival, specifically the Desert Island Escape minigame. Amiibo Festival as a board game was 100% luck-based, so it wasn't as fun as Mario Party as a board game, but Desert Island Escape was a really fun way to use all the Animal Crossing Amiibo cards for a very challenging, fun, and replayable experience. Interesting. I don't know much about Amiibo Festival, so interesting. And then Ambidex Cube says Yakuza games, and then in brackets, I'm not even joking. But you're right. You're like 100% right. I think that Yakuza games are for girls. Do they fit into the category of girly games that I've established? Probably not. However, you know what does? The Cabaret Club, and that's what we're going to be talking about. So, for anyone that isn't familiar, you might be familiar with the Yakuza games, but if you haven't played a Yakuza game yourself, you might not know that some of the mini games in Yakuza, or like some of the side quests, are very unique. So one of the main ones in like Yakuza 0, and I think in most of the mainline Yakuza games, at least that I've played, there's a cabaret club, and the mechanics of the cabaret club do differ a bit from game to game, but typically what you're doing is you have these hostesses, and you can dress them up. And so you can give them like different stats. They all have kind of like preset stats, but depending on what they're wearing, you can like maximize certain things like their sexiness or their cuteness, etc., etc. I can't remember exactly what it is. It does play like a simulation game once you actually get into it, at least for the Yakuza 0 one, where, you do your dress up and then you go at it, and it's like a simulation of like making sure that everything is going okay with the hostesses and the person that's like at their table, and the music that plays is very good. It's a fantastic time. So yes, I do think that the Yakuza games are for girls, especially the Cabaret Club. Anyway. Then James says, okay, there's a Wii game called America's Next Top Model that I want you to play because it's so bad it's good. I have to play this, I think, because once V said that they could fight, I was like, ooh, the girls are fighting. So maybe I need to check it out. And Kyora says, I definitely say Animal Crossing and Sims are my favorites. Then Lan says, Poke Park Pikachu's Adventure, aka best non-mainline Pokemon game. Interesting. I don't even know if I've heard of that. And then Beep says, oh, I love Animal Crossing. There's probably others, but I can't think of them at the moment. Completely understandable. Then Andre says, there's this spin-off for the Wii called My Sims Kingdom that I absolutely loved and spent way more time than I care to admit. Also getting married in any and all Harvest Moon / Story of Season games. I don't know what the differences are between the two games. So I had My Sims Kingdom for the DS. And obviously there's going to be some differences there, but I don't know how different they were. I'm intrigued to know because I did really like the DS game. I did really enjoy it as a kid. Even though I rage quit and I smashed my head on my DS. On the top screen of my DS. And that's, anyway, let's move on. Then Jay says, Harvest Moon, Another Wonderful Life. It's literally just A Wonderful Life, but with a female playable character. Great game, though. Also, a friend in university showed me how addicting Style Savvy was back in the day. Man, I want to play Style Savvy. That's one that I didn't have, but it's actually, like, alarmingly expensive on eBay, because I actually did look at this because I was interested in playing more girly games. And, it wasn't like super duper expensive, but it's more than I would like to pay. So maybe someday. And then Brayden says Miraculous Ladybug game. And so I'm not sure what one that Brayden is talking about because I think there are some Miraculous Ladybug mobile games. And so I did some Googling. And apparently there's a Miraculous Ladybug game coming out at some point this year. I don't know. I haven't heard much about it, but maybe that's happening. I don't know. And I really like Miraculous Ladybug. You might not know that. At least I used to really like it. I still watch it from time to time if it's on TV. I was watching it this morning. So if that video game comes out on consoles, maybe I will try it. Will it be trash? Maybe. But I will play it. Anyway. Then Shameless Senpai says, my girlfriend usually does not like games, but thanks to the pandemic, I got her into Stardew Valley and Animal Crossing, and she loves them. I love to hear that. Hell yeah. And so for my answer, I just want to get right into the topic of the show, which is all about girly games. And so this might be a bit jumbled, a bit messy in how I have organized this, but that's why I do a podcast and not video essays. Because I can just talk, and I obviously try and keep it as structured as can be and make as much sense as possible, but let's be real here. I'm all over the place, so let's get into it. So I first want to give some, I guess, not backstory, but like some context about girl games and my experience as a girl gamer, etc., etc. So, growing up as a girl gamer, literally every game I played basically had, a male playable character, right? So I grew up on Crash Bandicoot, Kingdom Hearts, which Kingdom Hearts didn't have a female playable character, and like mainline until Birth by Sleep, so I was already like 10 at that point. But growing up it was like Kingdom Hearts, Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, Mario, whatever. And so I wasn't playing as a girl playable character, and that's not really what we're talking about here, but I do think it's important to mention. But in these girly games that were specifically targeted for young girls, like Bratz, Tinkerbell, those are the ones that are coming to mind, because those are at the top of my mind. Winx Club, there was like a Trolls game, I think. There's a bunch of them out there. There's a bunch of these games out there. Barbie. And those were really the only games that I remember playing as a kid that, you could play as a female character, and that really kind of embraced femininity, I guess. And I feel like you do see that maybe a bit more now, or maybe I just wasn't playing the right games at the time. I've talked a lot about dressing up as being a core part of girl games, but if you play like the Tales series now, like Tales of Arise, most of the Tales games, I think you can put on different outfits and different accessories. And, I think that is, I'm really glad that that's more mainstream now and not just limited to, dressing up in a girl game. It is something that is in a lot of games now, and I think that's really cool. But anyway, and another thing I want to point out is that a lot of these games like Bratz or Tinkerbell, or even, silly online Flash dress-up games, made me really happy because, so many mainstream video games just didn't really think of girls or women as being a target audience. And obviously that's changed a bit, but it's still very heavily male dominated in the industry, the people that are making the games, and it's just very male centric still. But I think we are moving obviously more towards neutrality. I don't know if that's the right word I'm thinking of, but it's definitely not as gendered as it used to be. But growing up, most games didn't even really think of women as being an audience. Like, that's what the girly games were for. That wasn't what Crash Bandicoot was for. That wasn't what GTA was for. I mean, obviously GTA isn't for kids, but even, women, not just girls, we weren't really thought of as being the market for video games until, I feel like, much later. So, don't forget about that, y'all. Feminism has come far, but how far? That was only a few years ago. I mean, not a few years ago, but like 10 years ago, which isn't very long in the grand scheme of things. Anyway. And another thing is that a lot of the games, at least I'm thinking of, were licensed from movies. So that was a big thing. So Bratz, Tinkerbell, Disney Channel IPs like High School Musical with Waverly Place, some stuff we've already touched on. Mary-Kate and Ashley, Hello Kitty, that type of stuff. A lot of girl games were from licensed IPs. You weren't getting like a new platformer that was made to appeal to girls. Naughty Dog wasn't out here when they were going to make their next game going to be like, let's make it all pink and purple and let you dress up your main character and, make this really good platformer, this like AAA platformer, but it's like really girly. Like, that wasn't happening. A lot of these games were lower budget. They were shorter. A lot of them were also on handhelds. And so it's very different than, I guess, mainstream gaming. So that's another thing I want to point out. And similarly, I don't know, my words are all fucked up. Most mainstream games, it didn't want to appear girly, like, at all. Or at least not in certain ways. And I think of like the PS3 era. And this is an era of gaming that I still feel so much disconnect with, where it felt like everything was trying to appeal to some sort of like hyper masculinity, or it just felt like colorless and boring, at least from my perspective. I know there's some really good games from that era, PS3, 360, whatever, but when I think of that era, like, I'm thinking, like Call of Duty, and it just games that don't look colorful. They go for this hyper realism that just doesn't look good. And it's all these white men with guns. Like, that was the era. That was that era in gaming, was white men with guns and blood and just fucking mess. And like, obviously, I'm oversimplifying a bit because we did also kind of have the DS and 3DS during that era, which was a very different story. But generally speaking, in like the more hardcore gaming audience, I guess, with, consoles, that was just fucking bleak. And even now with my PS3, I don't have many games from that era. Most of my PS3 games are, PS2 collections. It was just, it was rough. And these girly games, and I think games that are trying to appeal to girls, or maybe just kids, I don't know, have brighter colors and pink and purple, and they just prioritize aesthetics in a different way. And I mean, I feel like you still see that, the new Bratz game that got revealed. It's not like they're going for hyper realism, which wouldn't make sense in the first place, but you know what I'm saying? It's very colorful, whereas mainstream gaming can be so like blah, which has changed since the PS3 era. But you still see games every now and then where you're like, put some fucking color in it. This isn't nice to look at anyway. And so, although gender is a social construct at the end of the day, And, girls and women and whoever can play whatever games that they want to, regardless of if they're the intentional audience. Like I said, most of my analytics show me that most of y'all are men, and a lot of y'all still had answers for girly games. So there it is. I feel like girly games are important, and especially as a kid, they can act as a gateway into gaming as a whole. And so, I would have been into gaming either way. I was playing Crash Bandicoot. I loved Crash Bandicoot. I loved Kingdom Hearts. That was really what got me into gaming. And so but even Kingdom Hearts, I feel like, is almost a girly game in a way, where a lot of Kingdom Hearts fans are girls. You might not think it, but I feel like a lot of Kingdom Hearts fans are girls. So, even then, it's not marketed towards girls, but anyway, I feel like it can be a gateway into gaming as a whole, because a lot of, at least during my era, it might be different now. I'm not a kid. I'm not a kid growing up in fucking 2020 or whatever. But at least, back then, I feel like it helped get more girls into gaming, because it's just, at the end of the day, everyone wants to feel represented in the media that they consume, and they want to feel like they want to just enjoy themselves, right? And these girly games, even though, they usually don't receive the same budget or care or depth as these more mainstream games, I feel like they're important for girls. And one thing I really love about these games is the idea of self-expression, which is, like I've said, by dressing up. That is a big part of these games, and it's the one that keeps coming to mind for me when I'm thinking about my experience with girly games growing up. And I think, being able to have that interactivity of dressing up and, getting to choose what colors you like and what styles you like, I think that's really cool, because it's usually not in this negative way. It's like embracing femininity in games, which, is very masculine, and at least, quote unquote masculine. It was back then. It's, like I said, it's moving a bit more now towards being less gendered, but yeah, it's really cool. And so when I was, kind of typing out this outline for this section, it got me thinking about a lot of the mobile gacha games that I play, because I feel like a lot of them also appeal to a lot of girls. And so while I don't know, like, the exact numbers of the player base of, like, these games that I play, like Love Live, Bang Dream Girls Band Party, Hatsune Miku Colorful Stage, etc., Ensemble Stars, I feel like they have a strong female audience just from the interactions that I've had online in those communities. Almost everyone I've talked to has been a girl. And so I feel like that also, as a, like, I don't want to say they're modern day girly games, because they're not, but I think that some of the ideas are very similar. So in these games, you're not really, you can dress up your characters in some of them, just like picking outfits. It's less dress up and more just picking out an entire outfit. But I think a big reason that myself, and that I'm sure a lot of the audience plays these games, is because of how beautiful that, like, the character designs and the outfit designs are in the gacha cards. So, like, first off, there's so many girls. All of the cast in Love Live and Bang Dream Girls Band Party, they are all girls. And they have big casts. So I think Love Live, School Idol Festival All-Stars, that has almost 30 characters now, I want to say. And Bang Dream Girls Band Party, I also want to say close to 30 characters, maybe more. And Hatsune Miku Colorful Stage, most of the characters are girls. There's like 6 male characters, and 2 of them are like already existing Vocaloids. So pretty much all these games, except for Ensemble Stars, have girls as like the entire cast. And even with Ensemble Stars, it's still a girly game in a way, in that the character that you play as is a girl. The producer is a girl. And so even though you're not collecting these nice outfits for girls, you're still collecting these nice outfits and nice character art for boys. And so when you combine this idea of having so many different character designs where it's like, different hair, different hair color, different styles, different eyes, different all these things, these characters with their own personalities and, et cetera, et cetera. And then you combine that with the different aesthetics of the different outfits that they can have on. So like a lot of these games will have, one character in so many different outfits just from past gotchas. So I think of, Love Live, which I have a lot of experience with, and there's so many different outfits for like 9 different girls, different themed outfits for the different girls. So I think of, the Muse girls, and I think of Nozomi, and she has purple hair. She usually has a purple palette in general, and there's like different, and then you have other characters like Maki who has red hair and usually has a red palette. There's a lot. And, take those different aesthetics and combine them with different themes. Then you get like mermaids. So you'll get different color palettes and different characters with looking like mermaids. And then there'll be another set where they're like fairies, or there's a Victorian era set, a circus themed set, traditional sets. There's so much. And so even though it's not technically a dress-up game, technically pretty much every game I'm talking about here is a rhythm game when I'm talking about these mobile games, I think that really helps appeal to girls is, the different outfits and collecting them and the different aesthetics. And I really like it. I really like it. And I think that it's fun and pretty. And that's what girls like, right? That's what I like anyway. I'm a girl. And just speaking more generally, I know I've said so many times now that, these more feminine, girly games do focus more on aesthetics. I also think that expands not just to like dressing up in Bratz or collecting as many cards and outfits as you can in Love Live, but also, decorating your island in Animal Crossing. You see a lot of women getting really into that. And so it's just, I don't know what it is about being a girl, but we tend to like that stuff. We tend to really like aesthetics and making things pretty. I'm sure you could do a deep dive on that to see, how society has made us think that way, but it's fun, right? It's fun looking at pretty outfits. Anyway, another thing about these girly games is that they have a different emphasis when it comes to gameplay. So when most of us think of gameplay, we tend to think of things like combat, whether it's like an action RPG or a shooter, whatever, platforming, etc. And that's, I feel like, what most of us think of when we think of video games, whereas these girly games, they can and they do those things, but there tends to be more of an emphasis on simulation gameplay. So whether that is decorating and dressing up, or if it's something like The Sims, where you're just making your Sims do random shit, creating like storylines. I see a lot of Sims players that just kind of create their own storylines for The Sims, or, just doing your dailies on Animal Crossing. That seems to be something that appeals to a lot of women. That's, one common factor with a lot of these games. Or they have a lot of mini games. That's another thing with these girl games, that a lot of them are mini game heavy, which I want to say, less so now. I'm talking mostly about those licensed, Bratz, Tinkerbell, those types of games. Now we mostly just see like Animal Crossing or, The Sims. That's like completely different, but anyway. And so kind of getting into that, like if you asked what types of games that girls play 15 years ago, you probably would get answers like Style Savvy, America's Next Top Model, Bratz, etc. Those games that are specifically made for young girls that didn't try to appeal to anyone masculine. Those were the games that got a lot of girls my age into gaming. But now, I think it's a bit different, when we think of girl games now, we think of those simulation games like Animal Crossing, Sims, or Stardew Valley. And even though many people, other than just girls, play those games, it seems that as the video game industry evolves, and perhaps society, that girly games aren't as in anymore. And, I do think one side, it's good that we're moving away from this being, such a masculine dominated industry that we have to make this small percentage of games just for girls. I do think that that's good, but at the same time, I don't want us to just lose those girly games that were on consoles and on handhelds. And so there's a few reasons why I think maybe we're seeing this shift, other than, just society evolving and stuff. I think part of this could be just because of the decrease in licensed games in general over the past decade, because that, like I said, that's what a lot of these girl games were licensed games. And so, back in the day, like, I have a shit ton of licensed PS2 games, like Madagascar, Robots, Winnie the Pooh. There's so many over on my shelf. Shrek. There were so many of them. And now you don't see them unless they're big budget, like Spider-Man. Like, those are the type of licensed games that we get now. And obviously, I feel like we're almost getting a revival of the licensed games. Like, I feel like I've been seeing more of them popping up. Like, obviously, you don't really see them in a Nintendo Direct very often, but I feel like maybe they're coming back. But games cost more money now, which I think is maybe another factor why we're getting less of these licensed games and girly games, is that a lot of these girly games were not high budget. A lot of them were for handheld. They were based off of mini games. There just wasn't nearly as much work, effort, money put into them compared to more mainstream games. And I think, as the video game industry has become so much more competitive, that it's become more difficult to kind of do that and not have it be a complete shit show. Because then we also have, the rise of games journalism, where I feel like any game could come out and, anyone could review it, even if they're not the target audience, and say that it's bad, and everyone would be like, oh, I don't know. It's just weird. Everything's changed. And also the rise of mobile gaming. So, like I said, I'm not a child right now growing up in the 2020s. But I do feel like maybe there's a lot more girly games there, because a lot of the girly games growing up for me were on the DS, which is a handheld system. And, we don't really have a handheld system anymore. We have the Switch. But even then, you're getting games of, like, console level quality on there. And so, every kid now, I feel like, has their own iPad or something. We have these iPad babies. And so I feel like there's probably a lot more girly games there that I haven't really dug into. And even, like I was saying earlier, even like Love Live, Bandery, like, they're all mobile games that I would consider girl games. And I don't know where I was going with that. I lost my train of thought, and now it's just fucking gone. But anyway, like I said, I feel like the last few years there's been a decrease in these girly games, and maybe I'm just missing out because I'm not the target audience. Maybe I just don't see them. I don't know. But I do hope we're starting to see some sort of resurgence with, the release of Bratz. And, maybe this upcoming Disney Marvel showcase, maybe we'll get a new Tinkerbell game. Who knows? We are getting a new Disney game. Disney Dreamlight, whatever the fuck it's called. So, maybe we will see more of that, but I'm not optimistic. And, although this new Bratz game is probably going to sell more for, like, grown Bratz fans like myself that, want it for nostalgia, I do hope that it's a sign that we could see more of these girly games in the future. And maybe young girls growing up with current gen consoles are content to be playing Mario Odyssey, Animal Crossing, Crash Bandicoot, etc. Those sort of, not really gendered games, but just like games for kids. Maybe they're just content with that. But I think it's important that we don't limit girls to just girly games. But I also think it's important that girly games continue to exist like they did 15 years ago. These games help get girls and women into gaming and can help them feel like they belong in the industry, and just, having games as a hobby. A lot of these games are just fun, too. And another thing, like, a lot of these games were dress up, flash games. You go online, you go on girlsgogames.com, and, I mean, Flash is, like, gone now, right? So a lot of those games got wiped from existence. And I do think there is some dress-up stuff still online, but, you know, I don't like the idea of girls losing, you know, just games as an outlet in the same way that it was years ago. You know, obviously times are changing, but I just think girl games are good. And, you know, I think that embracing femininity is good. And it might seem kind of materialistic or shallow that a lot of these girl games do focus on, you know, like looks and appearances and stuff. But honestly, I don't see it that way. I just see it as having fun, dressing up, and it's just like aesthetically pleasing. And, you know, a lot of games don't have that, but it's something that a lot of girls like myself really enjoy. And so I hope that, you know, that's not lost. And like, there's just so many aesthetics too. Like, I think of the Tinkerbell game and how, like, to me, cottagecore seems like such a feminine aesthetic. At least, you know, that's kind of how it's been construed for a while. And I think of, you know, playing my Tinkerbell game, and I'm like, this is so good, but I can't think of anything at the top of my head, like a recent game that gives me that same feeling of, you know, just being a fucking pretty fairy and enjoying myself. So yeah, I think we need more girl games. Bring them back. Maybe they are coming back, I don't know. But I know this has been all over the place. I apologize for this absolute jumble of thoughts, but I hope you enjoyed listening to me ramble about girly games. And maybe, you know, you have some recommendations now from everyone's answers to the question, and also just myself. I recommend Bratz and Tinkerbell, in case you're wondering. But anyway, thank you so much for listening to the Luna's Galaxy podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. I'll be back on Tuesday, September 13th for the next episode, where we'll be discussing who knows what. If you want to be a part of the Luna's Galaxy community, you can join our Discord server, link in the description. You can also keep up with me on Twitter, Instagram, or Twitch, where I'm at Emmy Luna Games. And now you can also support me on Patreon. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.